TERUMAH, a dwelling among us. Act Y, the gift of the heart. The night had settled gently over the neighborhood, the kind of night that belongs only to the month of Adar. Cool but not harsh, quiet but not empty, as if the world itself were holding its breath in anticipation of joy not yet revealed. Inside the house, a single lamp cast a circle of warm light across the dining room table. Beyond that circle, the room faded into soft shadow, the familiar shapes of chairs and shelves becoming silhouettes. It felt less like a room and more like a small island of light in a vast sea of darkness. On the table lay an open chumash, its pages worn at the edges, notes written carefully in the margins over many years. Beside it sat 2 cups of tea, one half finished, the other untouched, steam rising in slow, twisting ribbons. A father and his son sat across from each other. The boy had turned 13 earlier that winter. No announcement had been made beyond a modest family meal, no ceremony to mark the shift, and yet the father felt it. A quiet change, like the turning of a season. His son now listened differently. Questions lingered longer before being asked. Silence no longer felt empty. Outside, faint sounds drifted through the window. Children's laughter, the rattle of something metallic, perhaps groggers already being tested for Purim. Somewhere, a door slammed, followed by a burst of voices and running footsteps. The father placed his hand gently on the page. "Parshat Terumah," he said. The boy leaned forward, eyes scanning the unfamiliar Hebrew letters. "What does that mean?" "It means a portion lifted up," the father replied. "An offering given from the heart." He paused, letting the words settle. "This is the portion where the Creator asks Israel to build a sanctuary, a dwelling place for His presence in the world." The boy frowned slightly. "But why would He need that? Doesn't He fill everything already?" The father's lips curved into a quiet smile, not of amusement, but of recognition. "That question," he said softly, "is the doorway into the entire portion." He lifted the chumash and read slowly, the ancient words filling the small circle of light. "Take for me a portion from every person whose heart moves them." He closed the book partway, finger marking the place. "Do you notice something?" he asked. The boy shook his head. "It doesn't say from everyone," the father continued. "Only from those whose hearts are moved. No one was forced. No one was compelled. The sanctuary began not with stone or gold, but with willingness." The boy considered this. "So the Creator wanted something personal." "Yes," the father said. "Because a dwelling built by obligation is only a structure. A dwelling built from the heart becomes a place where presence can rest." A gust of wind brushed the side of the house, making the window hum softly. The father leaned back, his gaze drifting upward, as if seeing beyond the ceiling, beyond the roof, beyond the quiet street outside. "Imagine," he said, "a vast desert stretching in every direction, nothing but sand and sky, and in the middle of that emptiness, a sanctuary shining with color, light, and purpose, a place where heaven and earth meet." The boy's imagination caught fire. He could almost see it, the glow against the endless dunes, the movement of people gathering, the sense that something immense was happening there. "But still," he said slowly, "why would the infinite choose to dwell in something finite?" The father looked at him, eyes warm and steady. "He didn't choose it because He needed a place," he said. "He chose it because we need a way to come close." Silence filled the space between them, not uncomfortable, but full, like soil waiting for rain. The father opened the chumash again and traced a line with his finger. "Make for me a sanctuary," he read quietly, and I will dwell among them. He tapped the page gently. Not in it, he said. Among them. The boy repeated the words under his breath, as if testing their weight. Among them. For the first time that night, something shifted in his expression. Not confusion, not curiosity, but the faint beginning of understanding. The father saw it and felt a quiet stirring in his own chest, a mixture of gratitude and responsibility. This was why he studied with him. This was why he had waited for this moment, when childhood questions begin to transform into the search for meaning. Outside, the laughter grew louder for a moment, then faded again into the distance. Inside, within that small circle of lamplight, a different kind of preparation was unfolding. Not for a holiday, but for a life. The father closed the book gently. Tonight, he said, we are going to learn what it means to build a place where the divine can dwell, even for those who were not commanded to build it. The boy looked up. Even for us? The father nodded. Especially for us. ACE 2, the mystery of the sanctuary. The father reopened the TERUMAH, but this time he did not read immediately. His fingers rested on the page as if feeling for something beneath the ink and parchment, as though the words were only a doorway to something larger. Before anything was built, he said quietly, the people were shown a pattern. The boy leaned forward. A pattern? Yes, not a human design. A vision of how heaven and earth could meet without destroying one another. He turned the book slightly so they could both see. The sanctuary wasn't random, the father continued. Every vessel, every measurement, every color carried meaning. It was like a map, not of a place, but of a relationship. Outside, the wind had stilled. The night felt deeper now, as if the world itself were listening. The first thing described, the father said, was the ark. He spoke the words slowly, reverently. A simple chest of wood, covered in gold, hidden behind curtains. Inside it, the tablets of the covenant, the meeting point between the Creator's will and human life. The boy imagined it, unseen, silent, yet somehow the center of everything. Why hidden? He asked. Because the deepest truths are not displayed, the father said. They are protected. The ark teaches that at the center of existence lies something sacred that cannot be treated casually. He tapped the table gently. For the world to become a sanctuary, people must learn to guard what is holy. Truth, life, dignity, conscience. Without that, everything else becomes decoration. The boy absorbed this, his expression more serious now. And then, the father continued, came the table, holding bread that was never removed from before the presence. That sounds like provision, the boy said. The father smiled softly. Yes, it teaches that material life is not separate from spiritual life. Food, work, sustenance. All of it can become part of a dwelling for the divine when handled with gratitude and integrity. He lifted one of the teacups. Even this, he said, a simple drink shared in peace can be part of that sanctuary. The boy felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the tea. And then, the father said, his voice lowering slightly, the menorah. He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. A single piece of gold, hammered into shape. Not assembled, not constructed from parts, but formed through pressure and skill. Its flames burned constantly, leaning inward toward the center. The boy could almost see it flickering in the darkness. Why hammered? He asked. Because light that endures comes from refinement, the father answered. The menorah teaches that wisdom, compassion, and clarity are not accidental. They are forged. He looked at his son meaningfully, sometimes through struggle. Silence lingered, not heavy, but deep. The curtains, the father continued after a moment, were woven with colors of sky and royalty and life itself. They formed boundaries, not to keep people out, but to create spaces of increasing awareness. Like moving closer to something important, the boy said. Yes, the father replied. The sanctuary teaches that closeness is a process. You don't rush into the center. You prepare yourself as you approach. He leaned back slightly, studying his son's face. Do you see the pattern forming? The boy hesitated, then nodded slowly. It's like the sanctuary is showing how the world should be ordered. Protect what is sacred. Treat material things with gratitude. Refine yourself. Approach with respect. The father's eyes shone. Yes, he said quietly. And when people live that way, the presence can dwell among them. Not because of walls or gold, but because of the atmosphere they create. He closed the chumash gently. The Mishkan was not only a place people visited, he said. It was a vision of what humanity could become. The boy stared at the closed book, then back at his father. And this was meant for the whole world? The father nodded. Israel built the structure, but its meaning was never meant to stay inside its curtains. Like light from a flame, it was meant to spread outward. From somewhere in the distance came the faint sound of music. Someone practicing for the coming days of celebration. A drum beat, uneven but joyful, carried through the night air. The boy listened to it, then spoke softly. If the sanctuary shows how the world should be, then maybe learning about it is part of building it. The father felt something tighten in his throat. Not sadness, not pride, but the recognition of a moment that would not come again in quite the same way. Yes, he said at last. Learning is the first stone. He reached across the table and placed his hand over his son's. And choosing to live by what you learn, that is when the building truly begins. The lamp flickered slightly, then steadied, its light reflecting in the boy's eyes, no longer only curious, but awakened. Outside, Adar waited patiently, carrying hidden joy toward a world not yet fully ready to receive it. Inside, a sanctuary of another kind was beginning to take shape. At the third, where do we stand? For a long moment after his father finished speaking, the boy did not move. The room seemed smaller now, not in a suffocating way, but in the way a tent feels smaller when the night outside grows vast and mysterious. He traced the edge of the chumash with his finger, eyes unfocused, thoughts gathering slowly into something he did not yet know how to say. Finally, he looked up. Abba. The father met his gaze immediately. He could hear it in his son's voice. This was not a question of curiosity anymore, but of place. Where do we stand in all of this? The words hung in the air, fragile and heavy at the same time. We didn't leave Egypt with them, the boy continued. We didn't stand at Sinai. We weren't commanded to build the Mishkan. We don't serve inside it. He swallowed, his voice quieter now. So how can it belong to us? The father did not answer right away. He folded his hands together and looked down at them, as if remembering something far away, something he himself had once struggled to understand. When I was your age, he said slowly, I asked the same question. The boy's eyes widened slightly. You did? Yes, the father said. I felt like someone standing outside a great house, seeing the light in the windows, but unsure whether I was meant to come closer or remain in the dark. He lifted his head. Then someone taught me something that changed everything. The boy leaned forward. The sanctuary was not built as a private palace, the father said. It was built as the heart of the world, and a heart only matters if it gives life to the entire body. He tapped the table once, gently. Israel was given the role of building and guarding the center, but the nations were given the role of building the world around it. A world where that center could shine without obstruction. The boy listened, breath held. Justice in courts, the father continued. Compassion for the vulnerable, respect for life, honesty in trade, restraint instead of cruelty, responsibility instead of chaos. He spread his hands slightly. These are not secondary tasks. They are the foundations of a world where the presence can dwell openly. The boy felt something inside him loosen. A knot he had not known was there. So, righteous people everywhere are part of the sanctuary? Yes, the father said softly. Not by entering its innermost chambers, but by preparing the world to receive its light. He leaned closer. Imagine a lamp, he said. The flame burns at the center, but its purpose is to illuminate everything around it. Without the world around it, the light would have nowhere to go. The boy nodded slowly. And those who choose goodness, the father continued. Even when no one is watching, even when it is difficult, they become reflectors of that light. They extend the sanctuary beyond its walls. Outside, a car passed slowly, headlights sliding across the ceiling before disappearing into darkness again. The father watched the fading light. The Creator did not forget the nations, he said quietly. He entrusted them with the task of shaping civilization itself. The boy felt his chest tighten, not from sadness, but from the sudden weight of possibility. So, we're not outsiders, he whispered. The father shook his head gently. No. Outsiders watch from a distance. Builders participate. He reached across the table and turned the chumash to the beginning of the portion again. Do you remember how the sanctuary began? With gifts from the heart, the boy said. Yes, the father replied. Not with command, but with willingness. He placed his hand over his son's. That is why your life matters. Because you can choose. You can choose to build, to protect, to uplift. Every act of righteousness adds another beam, another stone, another thread to a sanctuary that spans the entire world. The boy's eyes shimmered in the lamplight. But it feels so small, he said. Just one person. The father smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. The Mishkan itself was made from countless small contributions, threads, clasps, rings, boards, sockets. No single piece was the sanctuary. But together, they created a place where heaven could touch earth. He squeezed his son's shoulder gently. Never underestimate the power of a single piece offered from the heart. Silence settled again, but this time it felt different. Not like a question waiting for an answer, but like a seed taking root beneath the soil. Outside, the distant music had grown clearer. Someone had begun singing. The melody uneven but joyful, rising and falling with the carefree energy of Adar. The boy listened, then spoke quietly. Maybe that's why I feel different this year. The father tilted his head. How so? The boy searched for the words. Like I'm supposed to start carrying something. Like I'm not just watching anymore. The father's eyes softened. That feeling, he said, is the beginning of responsibility. He stood and walked around the table, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. You are stepping into the age where your choices begin to shape the world around you. Not all at once, not perfectly, but truly. The boy looked up at him, both uncertain and determined. Then teach me how to build, he said. The father closed his eyes for a brief moment, overcome by the quiet gravity of the request. When he opened them again, they shone with warmth and resolve. "That," he said, "is exactly what this portion is about." The lamp flickered once more, steadying into a clear, unwavering glow. As if the small circle of light on the table had grown stronger, simply because two people had chosen to understand their place within it. The room had grown warmer, though the tea sat forgotten and cool. The small circle of lamplight now felt less like an island in darkness and more like a quiet sanctuary, a place set apart from the rushing world outside. From somewhere down the street came a burst of laughter, followed by the sharp clatter of something dropped on pavement. Children's voices rose in protest, then dissolved into giggles. A drum beat resumed, steadier this time, as if someone had finally found the rhythm. The boy listened, a faint smile touching his lips. "Adar," he said softly. The father nodded. "The month when joy increases," he replied, "even if the reasons for joy are not always visible." He walked to the window and pushed it open slightly. Cool night air slipped into the room, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. The sounds of preparation drifted in. Fragments of melody, footsteps, doors opening and closing. "In the story of Purim," the father said, gazing into the darkness, "the divine name is never spoken. No open miracles, no parted seas, no fire from heaven. Only a chain of events that, taken separately, could be explained as coincidence." He turned back. And yet, everything unfolds with precision, as if guided by an unseen hand. The boy watched him carefully. "So Adar teaches us to see what's hidden." "Yes," the father said, "to trust that presence does not disappear simply because it is concealed." He returned to the table and rested his hands on its edge. "The Mishkan was designed to travel," he continued. "It did not belong to one place. Whenever the people moved, the sanctuary moved with them. Whenever they stopped, it was rebuilt." The boy imagined the desert again, the vastness, the endless sky, and at the center of each encampment, the sanctuary rising like a heart beating in the wilderness. "So even when they were far from everything," he said slowly, "they were still close." The father's eyes softened. "Exactly." He leaned forward. "We live in a time when the sanctuary is hidden. No golden walls, no visible cloud of glory, no place we can point to and say, 'There, that is where heaven touches earth.'" The boy felt a flicker of sadness. "Does that mean the presence left?" The father shook his head immediately. "No, hidden is not the same as gone." He placed his hand gently over the chumash. The promise was not, "I will dwell in it." The promise was, "I will dwell among them." That promise was never withdrawn. The boy felt the words settle deep within him. So, the presence goes where people make room for it. "Yes," the father said, "where justice is upheld, where compassion is practiced, where life is treated as sacred, wherever people choose goodness, even when it is difficult." He paused, searching his son's face. "That is why Adar matters so much. It teaches us to celebrate even in concealment, to build joy even when clarity has not yet arrived." Outside, a child shouted triumphantly, followed by the rhythmic pounding of feet running down the sidewalk. The boy smiled despite himself. "It feels like the whole world is preparing for something." The father nodded. "It always is. We just don't always notice." He walked back to the window, looking upward. The sky was clear now, scattered with faint stars barely visible through the glow of streetlights. "The sanctuary showed what the world could be," he said quietly. "But the world we live in now is still being built, piece by piece, choice by choice." He turned back, his expression both gentle and solemn. When you choose integrity instead of convenience, when you defend someone who is vulnerable, when you refuse to join cruelty, even if it would make life easier, you create a place where the presence can rest. The boy's chest tightened, not from fear, but from the realization that holiness was not distant or unreachable. It was woven into ordinary decisions. So the world itself can become a sanctuary, he whispered. The father nodded slowly. That is a task of humanity. Israel guards the flame. The righteous among the nations prepare the world to receive its light. He returned to his seat, lowering himself carefully, as if the moment required reverence. For now, the sanctuary is hidden, he said, but hidden things are not lost. They are waiting. Silence settled again, but this time it felt luminous, as if something unseen had drawn closer. Outside, the drumbeat stopped. In its place rose a melody, hesitant at first, then stronger, voices joining together imperfectly, but earnestly. The boy listened, his eyes shining. It sounds hopeful, he said. The father smiled. That is the sound of people who believe the story isn't finished yet. He reached across the table and closed the chumash gently, the soft thud echoing in the quiet room. One day, he said, the hidden will become visible again. The sanctuary will stand openly, not as a relic of the past, but as the heart of a healed world. The boy felt a warmth spread through him, not excitement exactly, but a steady grounding hope. And until then? He asked. The father met his gaze, eyes bright with quiet certainty. Until then, we build. Act 5, Builders of Tomorrow. The melody outside faded slowly, like a wave retreating from shore. One by one, the sounds of the neighborhood softened, doors closing, footsteps dispersing, voices calling children home. The hour had grown late, and the night reclaimed its quiet authority. Inside, the lamp still burned steadily, its warm glow resting over the table where father and son remained seated together, neither eager to break the stillness that had formed between them. The boy looked down at his hands. They were the same hands he had always had, small scars from childhood scrapes, faint ink marks from schoolwork, the restless energy of youth still humming beneath the surface. Yet they no longer felt like a child's hands. They felt like tools waiting to be used. Abba, he said quietly, when the temple stands again, will people like us really come there? The father drew a slow breath, as if the question carried both longing and responsibility. Yes, he said, not as strangers, not as spectators, but as partners in a world that has learned how to live in peace. He folded his hands on the table. The temple will not exist to elevate one people above another. It will stand as a place where humanity remembers who they were created to be. A place where power bows to justice, where knowledge bows to humility, where strength serves life instead of dominating it. The boy listened, his heart beating faster. So everything we do now, it's preparing for that? The father nodded. Every act of goodness is a stone laid in advance. Every time someone chooses truth over falsehood, mercy over cruelty, responsibility over indifference, they are building the road that leads to that future. He leaned forward, his voice soft but unwavering. The sanctuary of the future will not descend into a world of chaos. It will stand in a world that has learned, slowly and painfully, how to become worthy of it. The boy swallowed, feeling the weight of those words settle into him. I want to help build that world, he said, almost in a whisper. The father's expression shifted, not surprised, not proud, but deeply moved, as if something he had hoped for but never demanded had finally revealed itself. "You already are," he said gently. He reached across the table and turned the chumash toward his son one last time. Terumah begins with a gift freely given. No one was forced to contribute. The sanctuary rose because hearts awakened. He tapped the page softly. That is still how it works. The boy looked at the ancient text, then back at his father. "What if I'm not strong enough?" he asked. "What if I make mistakes?" The father smiled, a quiet, understanding smile. "Builders make mistakes," he said. "What triggering matters is that they keep building." He stood and walked around the table, placing both hands on his son's shoulders. "You are not being asked to carry the world alone. You are being asked to carry your part of it, faithfully, courageously, and with a heart that remains open." The boy stood as well, feeling both smaller and stronger at the same time. Outside, the clouds had parted, revealing a scattering of stars that had been hidden earlier in the night. Their light was faint but persistent, ancient signals traveling across unimaginable distances to reach the quiet street below. The father noticed them through the window and smiled. "Do you see those?" he asked. The boy turned. "They were there all along," the father said. "We just couldn't see them until the sky cleared." He placed an arm around his son's shoulders. "The presence is like that. The future is like that. Hidden does not mean absent." They stood together for a moment, looking out into the night, not searching for something distant, but recognizing something already present. Finally, the father stepped back and extinguished the lamp. Darkness filled the room, but it was no longer empty. Moonlight slipped through the window, soft and silver, illuminating the table, the closed chumash, the 2 cups of tea now completely still. "Come," the father said quietly. "Builders don't live only in study halls. The world is waiting." They moved toward the door, the floorboards creaking softly beneath their steps. When the door opened, cool air rushed in, carrying the lingering echoes of Adar's joy. Laughter that had not entirely faded, a distant melody hummed by someone walking home, the faint rustle of trees preparing for spring. The boy stepped outside first. He did not feel older in years. He felt older in purpose. Behind him, the father paused for a moment on the threshold, looking back at the table where they had studied, at the place where a sanctuary of understanding had begun to form between them. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "Make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell among them." Not in walls, not in gold, among them. He closed the door gently and stepped into the night beside his son. Together they walked forward, 2 builders among many, carrying invisible tools, shaping a future they might never fully see, yet trusting with quiet certainty that every act of goodness brought that world closer to completion. Above them, the stars burned patiently, witnesses to a story still unfolding.